appalling, shocking, mind-boggling, bewildering, bamboozling. Insert any word to describe utterly shocking. And hey everyone, it's Karina from the Teacher Studio, and something I get asked quite a lot is obviously which are the best cities to teach English in Germany. But something we don't often talk about, which is also important, are which are those cities you should avoid at all costs. Whether you're struggling with the sky-high rent, the ability to find students, living in a strange country, it can be really difficult for English teachers to find the right cities to flourish in Germany. But that's why I'm here to help you break down those cities you should avoid and give real facts on why. If you're thinking about teaching abroad and not quite sure where to get started, stick around to find out where might not be worth the hype and what you should consider before making that huge leap forward. So in this video, we'll cover the cities that make living there quite difficult because of the cost of living, like Munich and Hamburg, oversaturated teaching markets that make it just nearly impossible to find your first gig, your first job opportunity. Berlin, anyone? Smaller towns in Eastern Germany that might make it even more difficult to integrate and feel at home simply because of cultural barriers and the dependency on the language you might need to learn. And of course, some of the current or common problems that English teachers face in Germany, from the visa process to just finding freelance work. By the end of this video, you'll learn which of the cities might not be the best fit for your teaching journey, but also I'd give you some alternatives that can make it a lot easier for you, cities that is, that you can find your space, find opportunities, and live a great life. So grab your pen or pencil, your notebook, and let's get started. Hallo, ich bin Karina. Ich bin eine Englischlehrerin in Deutschland und ja, ich spreche ein bisschen Deutsch, klar. Ja, ich verstehe. Und du bist du? Ja, ich kenne... Ich habe vergessen. Ich habe vergessen meine Deutsch, aber ja, ich habe vergessen. So, first up, let's talk about Munich. So Munich, it is a beautiful, vibrant city, but let's be honest, it's one of the most expensive cities in Germany. So for an English teacher, that might be a challenge, especially if we're looking at rents for a studio apartment that range from 1,200 euros to 1,500 euros. And if as an English teacher in Munich, you're earning roughly between 1,700 euros to 2,500 euros, well, you do the math. It's not mathing. To make matters worse, the job market is extremely competitive. So yes, there are a lot of international schools and people, so it seems like a good bet, right? But with so many of these internationals, English teachers are flocking in, and there are hundreds, even thousands of you vying for the same position. So this makes it an enormous challenge. So it means you'd have to take on multiple freelance gigs, and that seems like just stretching yourself too thin, especially in this pricey city. So unless you've got some type of savings stashed up, I would steer clear of Munich if you're just starting out, because you're going to be dipping into those savings more than you would like to. So I lived in Munich when I was an English teacher. However, This was 4 years ago, before the pandemic. So things were different. Competition was not as stiff as it is right now. And yes, I also lived in a studio apartment, and it was affordable at the time. I would say it was around 800 euros. So this was a really great price for a studio apartment. However, I did move later, to the end of my stay in Germany, or in Munich. I did move to just outside Munich, actually, a little town called Augsburg. And in fact, it was also a good experience because the commute from Augsburg to Munich was about 30 minutes or less. And I could find lots of working opportunities in Augsburg and in Munich as well. So it kind of worked out for me. But maybe I was younger, different, frame of mind. So it was all an experience for me. But I have to put the disclaimer that I did have a good time, and I did manage myself and my expenses pretty well in Germany. Compared to where I am now in France, it's different. But that's another video, another story for another time. Now, let's head to Berlin. So, Berlin has long been a hotspot for expats, artists, and of course, English teachers. That's just to give a nod to the vibrant community that there is in Berlin. However, this also means that it is extremely oversaturated. So it's just about impossible to find your footing in the job market in Berlin as a new English teacher. Finding a teaching job here can be really competitive, and that also means that a lot of schools only offer teaching opportunities on a freelance basis. So freelancing is not so bad for everyone, but if you're looking to build a career, this can spell lots of issues for you. Because in Germany, as a freelancer, you have to manage all of your taxes and your expenses yourself. In addition to that, there's no real job security, of course. You can't really determine your income from month to month simply because you're working on a freelance basis and a kind of an hourly basis, and it depends on availability and attendance of your clients or students. So this means if you're really looking to build a long-term career, Berlin is not the spot for you. So next we're going to talk about some of the smaller cities in Eastern Germany, like Chemnitz or Leipzig, and these might not be the obvious choice at the beginning, but for a lot of English teachers, they're thinking, oh, well, the big cities are saturated, let me target the smaller cities. Well, you'll be in for a treat, surprise, or just a horrible experience if you take on this mindset as well. Well, why? The demand. Is there any demand? So the demand for English teachers is significantly lower, simply because in these areas there are not as much young people, and also the need for English because of the lack of international communication or international companies or any just drive or desire to have an international mindset. It's not there. It's just lacking. There isn't the same expat community or the thriving expat communities like you can find in Frankfurt or other bigger cities. Therefore, the need for English as a language in general is significantly reduced. The local population, they also are most likely a little bit older, so their personal desire and their interest in English would also be a lot lower than a younger person, right? Trying to broaden their horizons. So that's something to keep in mind. And of course, another big issue is the cultural barrier. So this is something that can happen, I know, in just about any city in any foreign country. However, if you've chosen specifically a smaller town, guarantee you there might be a cultural barrier that might just be impossible to climb over. In addition to that, the language would be the language speakers would be quite patriotic, meaning that you're going to have to learn the language to a very high level if you want to communicate and fit in with the community. And for an English teacher, maybe this might not be high on your list, learning perfectly or fluently the language of the country that you're in. Understandable. I would suggest always learning just a little bit of it. Right? It's always a good idea just to have a bit of the language, but on the other hand, a smaller town will sort of warrant that you it's mandatory, it's obligatory that you speak the language. In this case, German. Sprichst du Deutsch? I want to input a little story here. So, like I said before, I've been in Munich, and there was a cultural barrier, of course, for me to overcome. And a lot of the time I did have clients who were outside of Munich in even smaller communities. And the experience that I've had there was, needless to say, appalling, shocking, mind-boggling, bewildering, bamboozling. Insert any word to describe utterly shocking. And maybe there were many factors that would have influenced that, but it was just something that I did not want to experience on a daily basis. I put up with it, I dealt with it because, well, it was just a couple hours and I left and went back to the biggest city, Munich. But it's something to keep in mind that in these smaller towns, smaller cities, people are really stuck in their ways and their experiences and their thoughts on the world, and you're not going to change that in the 1 hour of your English lesson. Yeah, so if that might be something that rubs you the wrong way, stay away from the smaller towns, I beg thee. Now, let's head north of Germany to Hamburg. So Hamburg is known, of course, for its beautiful landscapes. You have that amazing harbor nearby, but it's also like Munich, expensive. Sehr günstig? No, sehr schwer? Sehr expensive? Sehr billige? No, that's also cheap. Oh, I've lost the word. Okay, but it is expensive. So rent for a studio apartment could range anywhere between 1,100 euros to 1,400 euros. And similarly, you're going to have a salary of around 1,700 euros to about 2,500 euros. So it's cutting it really close. And there's leaving no room for savings or just finance building in this city. And like Berlin, the English teaching jobs are mostly freelance. So that means you're going to be juggling all of your finances and taxes and those things on your own, and multiple gigs with multiple companies or schools as well. This can have you spinning in a loop, with your calendar, trying to manage everything and keep everything organized. It's a lot of work for an individual English teacher. So again, if you're not down for the hustle, then Hamburg is a place to avoid. So before we wrap up this video, let's take a look at some of the common pitfalls or the common problems that a lot of English teachers face all across Germany, regardless of the city. First up is the visa process. So if you are not an EU citizen, this would be a challenge in and of itself. You can face anywhere between, if you're really lucky, a couple of weeks and towards months of waiting time just to have your visa approved. And obviously without a valid visa, it can be difficult to find work, to find accommodation. So this adds on a layer of uncertainty to your time in Germany. You might want to consider getting a lawyer to help you out with all of the paperwork at the Ausländerbehörde, and this I would strongly recommend. The next thing is health insurance. So in Germany, as a freelancer, you must pay health insurance, and this can range anywhere between 300 euros to 400 euros a month. So considering that high cost, it's a pretty big chunk of your salary, right? If you're also looking at your rent costs throughout different cities. So this can significantly reduce the amount that you do have for your disposable income, for your activities, for your savings. You get the point. And of course, this last one goes with no surprise that it is the language barrier. So in Germany, they speak German. Surprise, surprise. So if you are not a language lover like myself, this can be a problem in cities in the south of Germany, like Munich, that we spoke about earlier. Locals prefer to speak their language, German. So you might find this a little difficult. However, I think it's the same. If you went to a country that speaks English or your own native country, you want to speak your language, right? So keep this in mind. They will speak German. So if you're not willing to Google Translate, to learn, to point, to use, gestures at the beginning, this might be a challenge for you. If you want to go shopping, doing your daily sort of chores and activities, especially dealing with landlords as well, you're going to need to have a good grapple of the language to manage these life situations. Otherwise, have a lawyer or a friend help you in these very, important situations where German is required. So, where do you go instead if you're still thinking about Germany as a place to teach English? Well, you can consider cities like Frankfurt, Cologne, and Düsseldorf. These cities are growing and thriving. They have great international communities, so there is a need for the language, and the culture is great. You have thriving businesses there as well, and they're very welcoming to expats. And the cost of living, most importantly, is manageable. So this means overall your quality of life can be significantly better in these countries. I'm not going to go into any more details on that because that would be in my next video where we really dig deeper into these cities and talk about what really makes them great for you. And there you have it. While Germany is a beautiful country and a great place for expats, not all cities are made equal, and not all cities will satisfy your goals, your life goals or career goals. So be sure to do your research and keep in mind some of the points that I've mentioned in this video and look for that alignment with your goals. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe, like the video, leave a comment if there's a question that you have about anything that I've said, and share this video with a teacher who you know is thinking about moving abroad or thinking about moving to Germany. I'll see you in my next video. Ciao.